I'm always interested and invested in the stories of how people came into the things that they love. And since I always get on here and I talk about comic books, I thought it might be a good idea to talk about how I got involved in comic books. I don't think there's any other way around it that I have to give credit to my father for doing this, but it wasn't like, oh yeah, here son, here's a comic book moment. Nah, my dad is really involved in, he really loves learning about like black history, African history, indigenous history, like the history of folks that were disenfranchised. So that was my childhood. And you might be like, oh yeah, that's cool. Hold on, I'm not done yet. It's the only thing he ever talked about with me day in and day out. And this is a good thing to instill in your kid, but at the same time, dude, I'm fucking 6 years old, man. So he was really big into history and was just constantly me with the history. And I'm like, dog, this is all right, man. And so one day I was in the bedroom and he had this old like file cabinet, and at the bottom of that file cabinet were a bunch of these comic books like from like way earlier. They must have been like the 70s, 60s and things like that. And I remember seeing all these different heroes on there. It was Thor, it was Submariner, it was Black Panther, and I was asking him like, oh, who are these characters? What's this about? He was like, oh, these are comic books I used to collect when I was younger. I remember asking him about certain characters and he gave me the rundown, but he didn't know that much about them, and that's where I was like, oh, here's something he doesn't know about. I'm gonna put all my chips in this. And I have a very obsessive personality. I like to know how something works inside and out. Basically like Sylar from Heroes, where he had that ability of intuitive aptitude. Yeah, that's me. I'm gonna sit here and study this thing and learn this thing in and out. Usually if I'm invested in it. As my friend Elvis will point out, like, yeah, when you care about something, then you put all these hours into it. When you don't care about something, it's oh, whatever. And comic books is something I did care about. And I didn't really know why, but I guess I realized now years later, I was like, oh man, I just really like stories. I like seeing the journey of characters, moments that define these characters, how they change over time. So when you're young, you love the characters. That's like your gateway in. And then you become older, you learn to appreciate the creative teams that made these stories possible. The writers, the artists, the inkers, the editors, letterers, all the folks that make this thing possible. And I love the hero's journey, and then seeing stories that have echoes of stories from way back when, like the story Superman, right? He's a dude from Krypton, a whole nother planet. It explodes, he comes and lives on Earth in a spaceship. And then the Kents, this family, find him and raise him. It sounds very similar to the story of Moses. And so I realized, oh man, I really love stories and I love talking about stories. Hence why I teamed up with William Evans and we created Black Nerd Problems. We had all these other folks on our staff talking about comic book reviews, talking about movies, TV shows, games, all of these things that are stories. And you gotta love the way irony works, because the things my father talked about, I started seeing playing out on screen. And told me years ago that there was a black samurai. Then you see this movie and the anime about it. Talked about how the Egyptians would weigh their heart against a feather. Then I saw that happening on Moon Knight. And it's funny, I remember being young and my dad was just talking about black history again. And I was like, hey, do you not like white people? And I remember to this day with him saying, I don't hate white people. I don't dislike white people. What I don't like is discrepancy. If things were fair, you would learn about U.S. history and you would learn about actual black African history in school, as well as the history of other people, not the ones just written by the winners. What I don't like is these things that have happened to black people and then they're told to just forget it or just let it go. But those that what he said, those that don't know the past are doomed to repeat it. And I've read so many comic books. I mean, I really started out reading Archie's Digest. That was my first comic book, really. But then in appreciating comics, you start analyzing and critiquing the stories, and you're seeing, well, wait a minute, this doesn't really feel right. Oh, why doesn't this feel right? Because there was no one black writing this thing. I'm not talking about this. Al Ewing, you're always doing great work. But you recognize certain stories, and you're like, well, this isn't really, this doesn't feel right. And then it makes more sense, like, well, if you're gonna tell a black story, you should probably have a black person telling that story, an Asian person telling an Asian story, a Native person telling a Native story, so on, so on. And there's one way that I will admit that my father and I are the same. It's that element, because I too don't like the discrepancy. And that's also something about growing up, where comics used to be an escape, but then you're like, wait a minute, some things are not adding up here. Which isn't always the case, but like, it's like you see something, you say something, and I write, and I have a platform, and so why not say the things? I actually thought this would be a short video for once, and here I am talking about my father issue, so let me just table that for the moment, and I'll talk about having grown up liking comic books. I never hid that shit. I was also very lucky where in high school I had a teacher, Mr. Ryan. He taught English, creative writing, and theater, and he also loved comic books as well, so I would talk to him about comic books like after class, after school. When I was visiting from college, I would stop by the high school after school to talk to him about comic books still. And to this day, I still talk with Mr. Ryan about comic books on a show he has, Tell the Damn Story, with Alex Simmons. Of all the things Mr. Ryan taught me about, like, creating, it was something he showed me in passing that always stuck with me. I remember his friend Alex Simmons had created the character, along with Dwayne Turner, I want to say, Orpheus, and we were reading the comic book, and when Orpheus passed, that shit hit me hard when that character was killed off. And I talked about it numerous times about the Orpheus character dying in the Batman comic books after only maybe a year and a half. I'll never forget Mr. Ryan being so upset about it, just like I was, and him pointing out that this other character, a black character that was created by a white team though, now this character is getting to shine instead of Orpheus, who was created for this moment. I'll never forget in passing him just saying, oh, someone had to be a white boy about it on editorial. I was like, oh shit, first off, that was hilarious. Second off, I didn't even think of that. And third off, it reminded me of my dad. And keep in mind, Mr. Ryan's a white dude from Brooklyn, but it was a great showing that, yeah, even other white people don't fuck with discrepancies that happen like that. And the irony of this is so funny because I used to be at home talking about comic books with my mom because it was just me and her there. And if I read a fire issue of a comic book, I need to talk to somebody about this, and I would talk to my mom about it. I would follow her around the apartment talking about it. One time I was talking about a Green Lantern issue, and then she goes to the bathroom, and I'm still talking about it behind the door. And she's like, Omar, I'm in the bathroom. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. I slipped the comic book underneath the door. Was like, yeah, if you see there on that page, yo, John Stewart made a whole sniper rifle. It was crazy. And she would playfully get frustrated at Mr. Ryan, like, I want you to be learning about like history and be talking about like that was his passion. And here, Mr. Ryan is like, you know, egging you on with comic books. And Mr. Ryan, he's probably gonna see this. There was one time I came back home from visiting him, and my mom basically said he was like a mentor to me. And I was like, I mean, I don't know if it was like a mentor. And my mom was like, Omar, you love that man. Shut up. And I was like, fair. But yeah, I guess he's like a mentor to me. Yeah. Because I love talking about comic books. I love talking about stories. And it's one thing to be telling folks that don't know about this thing, right? This dope thing that happened. I'm like, all right, cool, dope. But to talk with another fan, and Mr. Ryan was another fan who also writes and does comic books, I get to talk to someone that's like, yo, you're in this shit? Like, that's the best thing ever. And I carry that over into writing and talking about comic books online. It's something I really enjoy doing. And I think back to the early years of Black Nerd Problems when I was doing a bunch of comic book reviews and then developing a style of writing these comic book reviews where I'm like, these are basically turning into essays each review. And meeting the comic book creators at the conventions and being like, oh yeah, I review your book. And them knowing, oh yeah, I know. I remember being at Comic-Con and I was waiting in line to meet Donny Cates, and I didn't have any like comic books in my hand or anything like that. And I remember being looked at the folks in the line. They're like, you're just going here to meet me. They had like, I guess, stuff to get signed by him. He was writing Venom at the time, but I was reviewing God Country, the book he had on Image Comics. And I love that series so much. I should talk about that series. And when it was my turn to meet him, I go up to him and I'm like, hey, I'm Omar Holman. I reviewed your book, God Country, for Black Nerd Problems. This dude gets up from his seat and just hugs me. And I remember the people behind me looking like, the fuck is happening here? And the next thing he said to me was, hey man, y'all not fucking with my Venom run? What the fuck, man? Your reviews are fucking up my averages, yo. My shit baller. I said, hey, I did God Country. I'm not on Venom, but I can talk to the dude. You too mad for a picture? And he took a picture with me, and like you can see my like fro like eating his face. And if you're wondering, I did talk to our reviewer of Venom. I was like, hey, had a conversation with Donny Cates, man. He said, am I going too hard? Am I getting taken off this? I said, nah. Don't change a thing. Hey, I'll fuck with God Country, but if you don't fuck with something and you don't like it, you're respectful, let them know. When we up. And then I think that same year, I was with Will Evans, and he was reviewing Nightwing, and Tim Seeley was writing that. And when Will went up and introduced himself as the reviewer for Nightwing, we saw Tim Seeley go in his mind like a Rolodex. Black Nerd Problems. Okay, yeah, and then he remembered Will's review, and he's like, you know what? Yeah, you guys are fair. My man was like, there's these two other dudes on this site, and they just fucking rip into my shirt on some bullshit. And he gave Will like a signed copy of a book too. Like, nah, but y'all are fair. That was something else I appreciated as well, seeing that, oh wow, these folks read the reviews of these things, and where they fucked with it or didn't like it, maybe, they felt it was fair still. And one of my favorite interactions was with Mr. Ads, who was doing the art for Mr. Miracle run with Tom King. And I remember telling him, hey, I reviewed this for Black Nerd Problems. He was like, you get it. And if I remember, I think that was for like the issue of Mr. Miracle where he drew it like it was like a 2D scroller video game. And I love looking back on those moments, having written for Black Nerd Problems, and like they're so fond to me. And I think that even before that, I knew I was going to be doing something and writing in comic books, because there was one time I was at a friend's place and I had a bunch of friends over and one new person I hadn't met before. And I'm not a big sports guy. I know wrestling and X Games. And we're all watching basketball, and I didn't know something about basketball, and he starts making fun of me, this new guy. And I'm like, all right, cool. I don't fucking know you like that, but I can take a joke. And then I think a commercial for the Justice League came on, the animated cartoon, and he made a comment about not understanding why they went with the Hal Jordan Green Lantern, because I think the Green Lantern movie had just come out, instead of going with the first Green Lantern, John Stewart. And I informed him that John Stewart was technically the second Green Lantern, as he took over full-time for Hal Jordan, who was the first Green Lantern. And I remember the arrogance of him shrugging off my comment, saying, oh, that can't be right because on the cartoon. And I looked at him, and I remember seeing my friend put his hand on his shoulder, and everyone in the room saying, hey, this isn't something you want to do right now. Dude was just like, oh, okay, I wasn't aware. Another time was when my sister was working overseas, and she was with this company, and they were talking with this other company, and she sealed the deal with them because she knew about Daredevil. Somehow came up in conversation, and the dude was a real big Daredevil fan. She was like, yeah, my younger brother's a big comic fan. He was talking about Daredevil, and I was telling her about that Bendis run, and that sealed the deal. Ever since then, whenever I tell friends like something that's going on in comic books, I'm like, hey, this might save your life one day. I don't know what dude might be a sicko putting you to gunpoint, being like, hey, how fast does Superman fly? And the last moment was this comic book store I used to go to. Mr. Ryan used to go to this comic book store as well. I think I had come after work one day, and they were about to close shop, and he saw me, and he said, oh, okay, you can come in. And I was like, oh, thank you. And I always liked to know what was going on in each comic, even if I wasn't getting it. So I would get the comics that I liked, and then I would sit there and just force a habit. I would just, read certain comic books. And I had been going there for years. So he told me, like, do what you do. It's fine. Another dude came in, and the clerk told him, hey, just so you know, once he's done, and he pointed to me, I'm closing shop. That should have been the biggest clue that comic books were going to be a really big, important part of my life. I'll even add in this other story of when that comic book store closed. I had books that were on reserve, and they had talked about, like, they might be going out of business and everything like that. And I appeared one day, and I'm in front of the store. It's gone. It is emptied out. The only thing still remaining is the sign. A&S Comics, I still remember it. I was devastated. And to this day, I don't know why I did this, but a girl I was talking to at the time, I called her up. She didn't answer, and on her voicemail, I left a message, and the message was just me screaming, it's gone! My store is gone! To quote Jordan Calhoun from his book, Piccolo is Black, I was inconsolable. I'm talking on the glass sliding down. And looking back, I probably should not have left that voicemail. Like, I don't think we were there yet. I hope I apologize after that. Like, hey, sorry for that. I was going through something. So yeah, I always love comic books, always have, always will. And even if you didn't make it to end this video, for those of you that did, I hope this wasn't too out of the blue or weird, but I just felt like, oh, why not? You talk about this thing you love so much, why not say why you love it and how you fell in love with it? You gotta have a place to put your love.